Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Dylan. It's another one of these webinars from Privacy Engine. We try and cover topics that we get requests quite a lot for different types of topics to cover in these webinars, and as people will be sort of familiar with in terms of previous ones that we've done, we try and take a very practical approach to these. We generally chunk up our webinars into sort of two areas, if you like, or two phases. One of them is somewhat of a strategy, sort of our theory element, and then the next phase is very practical guidelines about how to execute the strategy or the approach using Privacy Engine. This particular topic is one which I personally have many conversations about. It's how to embed a culture of data privacy within your organization. It is quite a tricky topic to actually cover. And what we're going to try and do today is cover a number of different approaches to actually dealing with that. And as I go through each approach, where it's relevant, I'll actually flick over onto Privacy Engine as well, just so you can see exactly how I'm actually referring to that and how we would go about actually implementing that. I might just do another quick check, Dylan. You can just confirm you can see my screen, okay?
Yeah, the screen share is fine, John, and it's running smoothly there.
Okay, great. And if anything happens, Dylan, just let me know.
I will, of course.
Okay, fantastic. So for people who are sort of new to Privacy Engine, I know there's always a mix in terms of Privacy Engine customers and non-Privacy Engine customers. I won't dwell on this, but very quickly, we are a privacy management platform company. We have a platform called Privacy Engine. It's actually probably the oldest privacy management platform in existence, notwithstanding the fact that we launched it in 2013. Tens of thousands of users on the platform in over 40 countries and roughly about 300 companies using it. The problem that we're always and perpetually trying to solve is making life for the data protection officer, the DPO, and the privacy function within the organization as seamless and as possible, to remove as many of the pain points as possible. And there's multiple different challenges that a data protection officer faces in their sort of day-to-day job. And it comes about from the fact that personal data is everywhere, as most people are well aware of. But the updated figure from Gartner is that 65% of the population will be regulated under GDPR-like regulation by 2023. Which is a step up from their previous prediction. So this sort of trend of increased legislation, increased challenges for the DPO is one which we're always trying to keep on top of. Obviously, that has a net result of an explosion of privacy teams in the organizations, and they ultimately need to demonstrate compliance and avoid fines, build trust, and everything that goes with that. One of the key elements to this is actually building a culture, of course, of privacy within an organization. It's actually quite a tricky thing to do. The reason it's tricky is easy to articulate in some cases, very easy to actually solve. More often than not, data protection is not front and center in people's minds. And this poses a challenge. Obviously, a breach can happen at any time. So having the mindset or the awareness from everybody in the organization to be open to the challenges of data protection. It's a consistent thing that we need to actually develop within organizations, both from, let's say, an executive level and also from everybody in the company as well. If management, for example, aren't aware, or at a board level aren't aware of the challenges with data protection, it can become quite difficult to actually implement an effective privacy program. And then, of course, if everyone else in the organization, all the staff, for example, in an organization, are not effectively constantly reminded of the challenges and the potential banana skins, if you like, that are out there at the moment, then that can pose a problem as well. So there's multiple different strategies that we would recommend to actually address the challenge of building a good privacy mindset, a data protection mindset within the organization. Obviously, we're going to show you the tools that you would need to do the job as well. We've been working on these for quite some time, building out Privacy Engine itself. But one of the key challenges that we would get asked really nowadays is how do you build this culture of data protection, this mindset, when a certain proportion, sometimes the entire organization, is actually working from home as well, and the challenges that that brings. So we're going to talk through a number of these different challenges, a number of these recommendations, what we find works well, what we think are fundamentals, and then hopefully by the end of it, you will have a sort of a set of tools at your disposal in terms of approaches that you can bring back to your organization to help build a positive culture of data protection within the organization that you're in as well. So I'm going to really talk about, I've got 6 different approaches here, which we will get through. Feel free to ask a question at any time. I will likely leave the questions right till the end, unless it's a very simple one, and we'll go through this as we normally do in terms of the actual timing of it. We'll wrap the presentation element of it up at around half, and then we'll leave 15 minutes for questions. Broadly speaking, we'll stick to that type of time frame. But please feel free to ask a question in the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar as well, and I will get to it at the end. And just, of course, to let everyone know, this is being recorded as well. So the approaches that I have on the screen here, I've identified 6 different approaches to building a mindset or a culture of data protection. There's no priority listing here in terms of which one I think are more important, more or less important. But you know, the one that I would say is fundamental is probably the first approach, and it's the organizational structure. And I suppose people who would have heard webinars from us before will not be surprised by that particular comment. We have, done hundreds, thousands of assessments over the years, and were we to identify a principal component, if you like, of a effective privacy program, it is probably the organizational structure within that organization itself, which we think is really, really critical. This is independent of what tools you use. It's to a certain degree independent of the individuals necessarily within an organization, but without having an organizational structure that's structured in a specific way, you will not get a culture of data protection. We can say that with a high degree of certainty as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll go through some of the other approaches as well. And as we do, I suppose one difference here that I'll just specify in terms of the approach we would normally take, as we go through each approach, I'll flick back and forth where it's relevant onto the platform just to show you the different things that I think are relevant to that particular approach as well. Okay, so the organizational structure is absolutely critical. I can't overstress how important this is in order to actually develop a proper privacy program, but also to embed a positive privacy culture within the organization. Some of the pitfalls, if you like, to watch out for here would be sometimes, for example, organizations would simply appoint a data protection officer, and then they would, to a degree, leave the DPO to their own devices without any support. And that very often fails. In fact, it almost always fails. You really do need buy-in from the wider team and from the wider organization as well. So we are huge fans, if you like, of the concept of data protection champion. We actually think it's fundamental in a privacy program. So a data protection champion is somebody in the organization. Data protection is not their full-time job by any means, but it is somebody in the key areas of the business that they will be able to work with the DPO to complete some of the certain functions of the privacy office. You might have a DPO or a DP champion in the HR department, in marketing, in IT, and so on. It's rare when you go into any organization that the DPO will be fully aware of all the operational procedures within that organization. You really do need to get that information from the DP champions and then combine it with the knowledge and the skill set of the DPO in order to have a smooth process. And of course, you need everybody else in the organization as well, all the staff, to have a certain level of awareness of certain key things as well. Now, one of the things that we also find is in terms of simplicity, the communication between the DPO and the DP champions, we think is really quite key. And what we can see in effective programs, even from speaking with our own customers, Privacy Engine is heavily used in this regard, not least because it can actually point the DP champions in a direction where they can identify what tasks they need to do in a very clear and concise way, but it gives them a single point, a single resource for everything that they need to know with respect to data protection. And this should be somewhat obvious to a certain degree. Things get lost in email. DP champion, very rare that it's their full-time job. More often than not, they're dipping in and out of the privacy program a couple of hours a week. So to have that single place that they can go to in terms of the communication with DPOs, or for completing DPIAs, for reviewing documents, for any of the many workflow management tools that are available on Privacy Engine, this is really quite central. So I'm just going to flick over to the platform just for a second, and I'm going to show one feature that I think that we're told works very well with regards to the communication specifically between the DPO and the DP champions. And I'm going to just look at the support feature here as well. Dillian, you might just confirm you can see Privacy Engine now at the moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the platform is open and working away there, is that?
Great stuff. So one of the things we would recommend is this concept of group chats. So for example, I can start a group chat between the DPO and the data protection champions as well. If I wanted to send something to some of the specific DP champions, I can just select who I want to do it here. Or if I want to start a conversation, if you like, with all of them, I can do that here. And the reason that's important is, again, you have this thread in a single place that we can go back to, particularly from an audit perspective, which sometimes can be important in the event of an investigation. But also, this is a secure environment. A lot of the times as well, keep in mind, the privacy program is discussing pieces of information that are highly confidential and highly sensitive. It's very helpful to have that in a secure communications platform where it's encrypted at rest, encrypted at transit, and you can have your conversation there without having it over email, which very often is not necessarily as secure as a platform like Privacy Engine. So that's a key area as well. The other thing that I would just mention very quickly while I'm here on this section is the internal review for document management. Again, in terms of building a culture of privacy within the organization, the relationship, the communication between the DPO and the DP champion should be as seamless as possible. Having the tools at your disposal to actually do that just helps break down all of those things that are difficult to get up and running without having the tools to support them. So in this particular example, we're asking our DP champions to review certain a document, and you can quite quickly specify the order of this so that Privacy Engine will cater for the workflow and manage the situation. So the DP champion get notified when they need to review a document, they can log on to Privacy Engine when they need to do it, and everything again is in the central place as well. So I think very important in terms of the organizational structure. Once that is in place, the next sort of big challenge, if you like, and I'll just go on to approach number 2 here, well, still on approach number 1 just for a moment. If we look at, once we have that set up in terms of the organizational structure, then we need to actually make sure that people are properly trained. In fact, without having people properly trained, this will only become effective once we have the correct organizational structure in place. You could have people that are properly trained, but lack the means of actually having an effective business as usual process. It will still, we will find that it will to a degree grind to a halt without having the structure right. But once we have the structure right, having people trained to a certain level is really key. So from the DPO's perspective, that would look like potentially being IAPP certified. Obviously, we can help DPOs with that. Sometimes data protection champions actually like to get IAPP certified as well. We think that's great. But certainly from a DPO's perspective, that can be a helpful qualification to have in your back pocket. We also recommend that there's sort of 3 different levels of awareness, if you like, that the DPO should be mindful of in terms of their approach and in terms of upskilling, if you like, themselves to all of the current challenges. Keep in mind, 2018, for example, there's more privacy legislation passed in that year than in the previous century combined, which is an incredible statistic. And if we look at that trend, there's more and more information being bombarded onto DPOs. So actually DPOs are finding it, in our experience, quite difficult to keep on top of all of the guidelines from the European Data Protection Board. And of course, if they're multi-jurisdictional, the problem is amplified as well, particularly if you're considering all of the legislations coming out from the US perspective, but also all of the guidelines coming out from all of the regulators in Europe as well. So let Privacy Engine, if you like, take the burden of all of that from a DPO's perspective. There's sort of fundamentals, if you like, in terms of cybersecurity training, phishing training, 12 steps to compliance. But then I think more than that, there's the support feature there as well, which should be used, I think, as your outsourced research center. If you have a query on data protection, that's what I would actually recommend using the support feature for that. That's what our DP Privacy Engine specialists are there for. Their job is to make sure they're on top of all of the privacy legislation. So if you have a query, you can just ask one of our guys. And of course, if you're looking at the support feature in Privacy Engine, you're speaking to an individual there. It's not a bot. And it's a great source of actually coming up to speed. The third element of that, I would say, is the practical how-to. As I mentioned at the start of the sort of webinar, we generally split these webinars up into two sort of categories. First category is a theoretical element about what you need to look out for. Second element is practically how you do that on Privacy Engine. And this, of course, can be used as well with the DP champions. Things like when to do a DPIA. So we've got webinars on that, for example, and you'll be able to look at what the theory is, in other words, what the legislation says, how you actually should do, when and why you should do DPIA. But then critically, what should you document on Privacy Engine, and how should you actually operationally implement the theory? So it's both that practical element and the theory combined on the webinars that are also up on Privacy Engine as well. That is a good resource for the DPO and the DP champions. And then finally, I would look at all staff and what is it that the staff need to know. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but building a culture of privacy within an organization, it's impossible to ignore the requirements of trying to educate the staff within your organization. There are features on the platform that have generic sort of like GDPR awareness training. I would recommend them, but I would also recommend going a little deeper in terms of the specific pain points of any one organization. Certainly cybersecurity awareness is key. We are seeing a massive increase in privacy, in phishing attacks lately, as everyone's probably well aware of. So I would strongly recommend the phishing training. This is probably the single most used training module. In fact, the phishing quiz is probably the single most used training module on Privacy Engine, because it helps people become aware of some of the challenges with respect to the phishing attacks that are actually out there at the moment as well. Now, I'm just going to switch over real quick again to Privacy Engine, and I'll just show you what that is and why this really helps from a culture perspective. Okay, let me just go on to the training for a moment. So for people familiar with Privacy Engine, they'll be familiar with this, but if you're not, I'm just going to really quickly go through one element of this just to show you what it looks like. So the quiz is a great resource because it takes people through a journey. It's a quiz. Everybody knows, whoever who's completing this, that they are actually doing a quiz. And, you know, it's not like the other approach, which is common sometimes, is to actually send out an email and don't tell people that it's a phishing test and see who clicks on it. But what I particularly like about this, and what our customers tell us they particularly like about this, is they know that people are being tested, and their job then is to determine whether this email that they're presented with is a real email or a phishing attack. And let's say they click, they think it's a real email. If it's not, it will walk the person through why that's not a real email and why that is a phishing attack. So the end user, all your colleagues are getting educated as to why that is the case. Now, the net result of this is, from the DPO's perspective, is they will be able to determine how likely a person is to click on a phishing email based on their score from doing this test. They'll also be able to tell how likely each department is, because you can print out and you can develop reports by department or by individual from your phishing quiz. So it educates the individuals that are completing the test as to what to look out for. It also generates that conversation, because I know from our customers that when they issue this to their staff, it starts the conversation, and that's a really important step when we're talking about culture. People can then start to realize just how easy it is to be tricked into clicking from a phishing email. Some of these are actually quite tricky to do. So I would definitely recommend that approach as a must-have as well. Now I'm gonna skip through a few of these a little bit quicker and just to explain what I mean by the different sort of role-based approaches that we're talking about here. The culture, when you look at the culture within an organization, privacy means different things to different people. And very often, notwithstanding what I had on the last slide with GDPR, high-level GDPR awareness, if you really want people to be effective, you have to relate it to their particular job, to their particular actions. And having a role-based training approach works well at doing this. So what I mean by that is, what we've seen on the previous slide was a sort of job that we had different training requirements for DPO, as you would expect, different training requirements for the DP champions, and then different training and educational requirements for everyone else in the company. What we're looking at here is different educational requirements based on what their core job is. So for example, if you're in the HR department, you may want individuals in your HR department to have more in-depth training on data subject rights. Now, more often than not, I mean, we are seeing a massive increase in data subject rights, or data subject requests, rather subject access requests, continuing to increase ever since 2018. It's like a hockey stick graph in the amount of subject access requests that companies get. The vast majority of these, our customers tell us, is in HR. So it is relevant for people in HR, the DP champion for sure in HR, to maybe have more of an in-depth understanding of the data subject rights module, which I believe is about a 20-minute module. You would never give that to everybody in your organization, but certainly for people in HR, that's relevant. You also might consider, obviously, the subject access request module, but in things like how long to hold on to information, for example, is a tricky one. And then also from the marketing side, you may want to issue the marketing team with some training requirements on consent and lawfulness and awareness, and they're all in Privacy Engine under what's known as the 12 steps. And then finally, with subject access requests, obviously we discussed this as well. You would also maybe want to provide access to support for key people in those elements or departments within your organization as well, so that they can get access to privacy specialists if and when they need to as well. So we're looking at an engagement plan to build culture that's both role specific but also job specific. Now, once we have that, I think another approach, which is an interesting one to consider, is a reactive approach. Now, obviously, we want to be as proactive as possible in our execution and in our strategy as well. But there will be times when it comes to data protection specifically that we will need to have a reactive approach. Now, you're probably thinking, this is obviously important, but I just want to spell this out a little bit. Like, if there is a breach, for example, it's really key in the event of a breach that we actually do something about that to prevent it from happening again. We do not want to be in a position where, let's say there was a breach for somebody, they clicked on a phishing email, just to take that example, and then we did nothing, and then there was a reoccurrence of that particular incident or breach. That puts us in a very bad position, really. And, we need to demonstrate, which is the whole spirit of the GDPR really, we need to demonstrate a level of capability and a certain level of compliance. So if there is an incident, we really want to be as specific as possible in making sure, trying our best that this doesn't happen again. So the example that I have in front of you here is that there's an incident or a breach because someone's clicked on a phishing email. The procedure here that we would want to look out for is, we would want to obviously register that breach on the data breach log, put in as much details as we can there. I won't go into that just on Privacy Engine at the moment. We've done full webinars on incidents and breach management. But what I would say is that it's quite a comprehensive workflow, if you like, steps through in terms of how to register the incidents and breaches. If it's just an incident and not a breach, I would certainly register on the incident log as well. These will generate risks. Those risks will generate actions, and completing those actions in an effective way with proper controls builds competence. Now, what I would also recommend is that you do, again, go back to that support feature. If there is an incident, leverage all of the knowledge and understanding that all of our data protection consultants have. We recently did a survey of why our customers actually picked us as for their privacy program, not just on Privacy Engine. And the resounding message that came back was, yes, the tool, the platform was great, but it was also the experience and the expertise that we have within our team that provided a degree of comfort to all of our customers as well, so that we can guide them on what best practice is and what they need to do. So if there's an instance or a breach, leverage that support. That's what it's there for. It's all included in the price in any event. So it's something that should be utilized on Privacy Engine. I would then look at doing an impact analysis. Now, the reason this is important from culture will become clear in a minute, but the best way to do an impact analysis of the breach is actually to interrogate your records of processing activity. If you have these completed on Privacy Engine, you will then be able to sort of slice and dice the data or filter through it to determine what IT systems are affected, what third parties are affected, what departments are affected. And then you need to put a plan in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Very often what that would look like is you would need to retrain certain people. You would need to redistribute certain policy documents. You would like to get individuals to confirm that they understand the policies that are implemented. You can do that through the learning management system. Again, I won't go through that, but we've lots of webinars on how that actually works, how you verify that somebody has read and understand the policy document. And then you may need to reassess vendors as well. And we've done several workshops on vendor assessments as well. But if there's a third party involved in the breach, we would need to reassess them as well. But it's this constant engagement with everybody in the organization and everyone in your full ecosystem, not just your staff, but in this case, third parties, that really is required in order to build up an effective culture of privacy compliance within the organization as well. And that leads us very nicely into a proactive approach. So in addition to being the reactive approach, which should sort of complement everyone's approach to privacy management, what we also need to consider is how we actually proactively engage with with staff, particularly, to embed this sort of mindset. Now, there's a number of different ways. One of the things that I would like to just sort of strongly suggest here is using what's known edutainment. One of the challenges, and I'll just put this in context a little bit, one of the challenges from a cultural perspective is quite frankly that the penny doesn't drop for a lot of people in the organization in terms of why certain things are important. And there are tools on Privacy Engine, particularly in the edutainment sort of sector, and I'll look at one called Ninja in a minute, that aims to transfer this understanding to individuals in a way in which they're entertained. Now, it sounds somewhat trivial, but it's remarkably effective. Another way which we can do that is actually using the questionnaire feature on Privacy Engine. And there's quite a bit in that, but the one I'm just going to focus in on here in terms of continuous and proactive engagement with all staff is the Ningio module itself. Now, that is available in Privacy Engine, will be available in Privacy Engine towards the end of the year. But I just want to show people what that looks like. Again, the idea here is to entertain people, and by them actually looking at these modules, they will actually learn what to look out for as well. Now, I'm just going to actually, you know what? I don't think I enabled the sound. I might have to stop sharing just for a moment, and then I'll reshare in just a second. Dylan, you might just let me know when I do reshare.
Yeah, of course.
I have to enable share sound. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, screen is fine.
Okay, great. So, right, what we're looking at here basically is effectively is the Ningio sort of modules, if you like. Now, these are designed to look. This is the way that this is done. Is it sort of looks. It has a sort of Netflix, if you like, style to it. I'm not saying look and feel, but it comes in seasons and episodes. What I'll do is I'll just scroll right down to maybe one of the last ones here, and I'll just show you what this looks like. And I might play these through. These are very short, so bear with me. I will play this one through, and then I'll explain why this is very effective. Hopefully, it will become somewhat obvious, but nonetheless, we'll give it a go. Sure, I'll click on there, didn't I? Yeah.
Rick. Ningio, episode 512. Lock before you walk. Security topic, Home VPN Security, starring Alex Thomas as Rick. German officials opened a criminal investigation after a cyber attack shut down a hospital's access to critical patient information, forcing it to delay life-saving treatments.
BP and O2 levels are dropping. We need to hurry.
I can't go any faster.
Transport 3, you're going to need to divert to National Memorial Hospital. Please acknowledge, over.
But we're 2 minutes out, and National Memorial's another 15 minutes away. Our patient needs immediate attention.
There's no other choice. Grand Meadows Hospital suffered a cyber attack. Their computer network's completely locked, preventing any access to patient records. Did you hear me? Please acknowledge you copy. Over.
Rick, I just got the news.
Come in, Margaret. I just got off the line with my security team, and I'm afraid it's pretty bad.
Do we know anything about how this happened?
It appears the hack was orchestrated through one of our admin workers' corporate-issued laptops. She was working from home and left her computer unlocked while she was away. Her husband used the laptop to check social media. He followed a link he saw that turned out to be malicious and ultimately infected the laptop with ransomware, which then infected our entire network.
Because it was connected to the VPN.
Correct.
So if the administrative worker had locked her corporate-issued laptop when she stepped away, none of this would have happened.
That's right. Corporate-issued devices should never be used by someone other than who they were issued to. Another way it could have been avoided was if her husband had been more careful about clicking random links on social media.
I have noticed an increase of links being posted to social media lately, especially in the comments section of people's posts.
It's another form of phishing, just through social media instead of email or texting.
I have an update. The staff at National Memorial was able to save the patient's life. He's stable and expected to make a full recovery.
Wow, that's wonderful. We need to get word out to everyone about how important it is to lock your corporate-issued device when you step away, and to not let other people use them.
Definitely. I'm on it.
Ningio Nuggets. Lock your corporate computer when leaving it unattended, even while working from home. Don't allow unauthorized individuals to use your corporate devices. Corporate devices should never be used to access personal resources, especially when it comes to installing and downloading unapproved assets. Don't click unsolicited links posted to social media.
Okay, so that's the length of the episodes. They're very short, but one of the things that I find interesting about that is, you know, that a lot of people don't necessarily realize the importance of the links in the social media tools that are available, or how easy it can be now to actually click on a phishing link. They're not always in emails, for example. They can be on social media posts, or the importance of actually not allowing anyone else use your work laptop or mobile phone when you're at home. Now, when everybody's working from home these days, these sort of things actually become quite important. It's a great way to convey very, very simple ideas that are really, really important from a privacy perspective. Each episode that they have actually takes a different concept and goes through it in a way that's entertaining and also informative, so that you're reducing the likelihood of somebody doing something that will ultimately get everybody in trouble. Okay, so just moving on quickly to the sort of second last one here, and running a little bit out of time, but I'll just explain an approach to working from home that I would recommend using Privacy Engine. So, for example, on Privacy Engine, there's a full suite of modules, in fact, on cybersecurity at home. Now, what I would recommend is, obviously, you upload employees, update your bring your own device and remote access policy. Hence the reason I showed the document management section earlier, because I think that's relevant here for your working from home program of work, if you like. And then pick and choose from these depending on which ones are relevant for you. Obviously, you know, VPNs, which is a 7-minute module you see there, I think is really important. But also there's some modules there that are now quite important that you may not realize or may not have been important maybe a couple of years ago. Safeguarding your smart TVs, for example, is a very interesting one, which I think I might just show a minute of if I have a little bit of time. There's a couple of key take homes there that I think are relevant as well. Phishing, there's 5-minute phishing training module, ransomware, even how to shop online as well. Right, so let me just check the time here. We're almost up. I would recommend people looking at the safeguarding smart TVs. There's quite a lot in that may surprise you in terms of how susceptible or how risky that actually can be in practice, particularly if you've got the same password on, let's say, your Netflix account as you do on other devices as well. So, okay. The final approach I'd just say is that if for whatever reason you are devising your own privacy program, and you can't find the modules you need, we do have quite a lot of partners. And just to explain the depth of that for you, it's really quite deep. So just to give you an example, InfoSec IQ are a good partner of ours as well. We've access to over 350 modules from those guys. They're already baked into Privacy Engine, so it's a question of just enabling them if you need them. There is, because it's a partner, that's not our content, it's all integrated to Privacy Engine, but there's a cost consideration there. But you know, there's 39 phishing modules, there's 92 social engineering modules, and for example, even physical security, there is 41 modules, so it's in multiple different languages. So a great resource. So don't be stuck. Always ask if you feel that there's something that's not there on Privacy Engine that you need in order to help build out the culture, to train people up, to make people aware. It's very likely we have the content that you would be looking for in any event. Okay, so that's a quick whistle-stop tour, if you like, of 6 different approaches which we would recommend. Again, just to add the first one there in terms of organizational structure, you know, it is really the one that I would say is absolutely mandatory, because nothing really works without having that in place to a large degree. And then, you know, as DP leads, DPOs, I would recommend you pick and choose which ones you want to implement to increase the effectiveness of your own privacy program as well. Okay, so I ran obviously a little bit over in terms of the time. We don't have a whole lot of questions coming through, so perhaps that worked out well. But what I have is just a handful here. So just, basic enough questions we've got here. Ninja will be live before the end of the year. You will see it in Privacy Engine when you log on. So if you want to have that, you can just you can purchase it actually through the platform. InfoSec IQ, it's not in platform, so that would be contact your account manager and get information that way in terms of what modules are required or what's available if you wanted to have a look at them. I have a question here. Do you have any HIPAA modules on that? We do. So, some from the US side. HIPAA is a federal privacy health act, if you like. So yes, there are HIPAA modules there. We also have a question on can you provide sector specific stuff? Yes, we can also. So that's also there in terms of different industry specific. This is a good question. How do you convince basically managers that privacy is more important if they don't believe it is? All right, okay. That's actually a really good question, because we would call it upward stakeholder management is how I would phrase that. There are a number of different ways that I would recommend doing that. First and foremost, one of the best ways is actually to distribute the phishing quiz. Show your managers the results from that. The other way is by clearly or identifying the risks due to completing either a gap analysis or a DPIA. Once you do that once, it's very likely you'll have the material you need, if you like, from a risk perspective, to I suppose open the eyes, perhaps, if that's what's needed of the managers. But I would say that there's that situation, while it was quite common, probably maybe even 5 years ago, it's becoming less and less of a challenge. Now most CFOs really get the financial implications of it. Most CROs, even chief revenue officers, understand that they need this in order to do business, and most CEOs understand that there could be huge reputational damage if they get it wrong. So there's a lot there from an upward stakeholder management perspective that we can help with as well in terms of articulating the case. One final question just come in here. Am I correct? Using Prime to embed learning helps if there is an incident which you report to regulator? Yes, you are 100%. So that's a really good question. We've seen situations where, without disclosing obviously any details here, and obviously, we've seen situations that have dragged on for months with regulators because it was felt that they weren't doing what they needed to be doing, and their approach was purely legal. And we've seen situations that are remarkably comparable to breaches where they were open and closed by regulators literally within a few hours, because they could demonstrate that a reasonable effort was done. Yes, there was a human error in a mistake if somebody did something, but you are absolutely helping your case if you can demonstrate to a regulator on a previous incident that you have taken it seriously, you have actioned it, and here's the results from it. Here's what we've done to try and put in controls to prevent that happening again. If that does happen again and you have those controls in place, obviously we need to consider how we tighten them up, but you're in such a better position than not doing anything at all. So that's a really good question, and thank you to the person for asking it. Okay, we are basically out of time. I just want to thank everybody for actually joining. This will be made available obviously on Privacy Engine, but also to everyone who's registered for it. And yeah, I look forward to doing another one of these hopefully in another month or so. I think we got another one coming up, Dylan, fairly soon by someone else. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Mohammed is doing one on the 2nd of December, and the topic is 2021, look back on the advances in privacy. So that's the upcoming
Oh,
one.
very good. Very good. Well, that'll be an interesting one.
It will indeed. And we're actually currently undergoing then scheduling out the next 6 for the start of next year. So that will be getting updated probably next week. So we can start advising people on them once that's done as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, listen, thanks to everyone for joining, and I will say goodbye and look forward to hopefully doing this again shortly.